See, I'm not afraid of heights and water until someone points out that we could plummet to our death right now. And then I'm like,
Apparently just saying we're on a bridge is enough for him to go, oh, I could die.
And here I'm
I'm in a
back up the
constant
memory
state.
of the time that I looked over the edge of the Hoover Dam.
Yeah.
That was nightmare material.
I'm in a constant state while I'm driving of I could probably die right now. So
Tend not to think about it.
Your car knows about that.
yeah,
And it tests your faith every day.
sure
What's
does.
happening with the car now?
I don't know if it's an electrical issue or a transmission issue. But it likes to go into limp mode whenever it feels like.
Okay.
So I haven't taken the highway in a few days.
Wishing you were offloading it when you're thinking about offloading it, don't you?
Well, I mean, at this point, I could just knock another $2,000 off and be like, this is someone else's problem. Give me 9. Enjoy. To our listeners, if anybody wants a $9,000 2017 Dodge Challenger with a check engine light on, hit me up. Feel free.
We'll check our emails more regularly.
Yeah.
I check our emails. We never get anything.
Oh, yeah.
I get requests.
This might be the
Feel
moment.
free to send us love letters, too.
dancingwiththebards@gmail.com.
Don't forget those feet pics.
I'll make sure Larry gets those.
Thank you.
They'll go right to Larry.
You know what? Just text them to me personally.
Yeah, no, I plan on it.
If my crazy ex can find my number, you guys can too. That's next month's blurb. Once I feel comfortable and safe enough to tell the whole story.
Fun. Welcome to Dancing with the Bards. I'm Ian, and I'm joined by my co-hosts Brooke
Hey.
and Larry.
Hello.
And joining us again is one of our favorite guests, Steven.
Shows how much taste you have.
I know. Well, I'm banking on the other guests not listening to this, so they don't know what I just said.
I used to be a favorite guest too. Now I'm not allowed out.
One of us.
Dude, you just gotta feed me. That's really all I ask.
It is true.
Took 3 bags of chips and a poppy.
Exactly. Better than the greasy cardboard I was handed last time.
Anyway, sorry for interrupting your intro.
You're fine. Some of us are wild for the game this month. Ark Nova is a management strategy game where each player builds their own zoo with the cards they draw from the deck. Use one of 5 action types to place buildings on a map, collect rare and exotic wildlife, team up with other institutions, and hire skilled workers to increase your rank on 2 scoreboards. The game ends when the players' appeal points and conservation points meet, and the winner is whichever has the highest positive difference between the two. This game was published in 2021 by Feuerland Spiele and designed by Mathias Wigge. Since its release, it has only had one expansion called Marine Worlds, which is exactly what it sounds like, as well as additional map cards, which act as playmats for building zoos. So kicking us off, I want to hear what each person's favorite animal that they had on their board was for our game.
I will start with my Siberian tiger that I struggled all game to put out, and it definitely earned legitimately by the end of this.
Yes, with a small loan from a friend.
Kind of like that Matt Damon movie.
It wasn't really a legal loan, but at that point, none of us cared.
It's capitalism. They're never illegal loans. It's fine.
He either lived in the box or got an enclosure. You guys take your pick.
Yeah, I just love the sheer amount of birds I had on mine. I had like 6 birds. That's all we had were birds and reptiles.
I mean, a zoo's a zoo at the end of the day.
I'm trying to remember what I had on my board. None of them ended up being favorites, so I'll just say the crocodile. Because, I don't know, it was a crocodile.
I want to say the koala that I worked hard to finally put on that board, but I have to say that my favorite animal on that board was the guinea pig in my petting zoo.
I knew it.
It was the guinea pig. I love guinea pigs. They're adorable, and they're not very aggressive, and they're... I don't know if you ever had hamsters before, but those things bite.
Yes.
Guinea pigs are just better hamsters.
Yeah, guinea pigs will run away instead of biting.
And you can give them veggie scraps. They're great.
Yeah.
Ian's going to disappear for 11 years, and we're going to find him in a house full of guinea pigs.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta say, though, if you're looking for rodents, rats are the best.
I agree to disagree.
They can also be free.
I mean...
Like, rats are good, don't get me wrong. I had nothing against
rats
them.
are very fun pets.
I had a friend who had a pet rat that you could use as a skateboard.
Squatting rats, however,
They're very smart. They're like little dogs, really.
Mm-hmm.
We had 2 guinea pigs and 2 dogs at my house growing up. One was a Saint Bernard, one was a Chihuahua. They both loved the guinea pigs because they found out that guinea pig poop is edible.
Oh.
So
Sounds like dogs.
they would, whenever we would bring the guinea pigs out sometimes in areas of the yard where we knew what was growing there, so that they could just have some grass and dandelions and relax out there. And the dogs would just kind of sit around them and make sure nothing bothered them as they ate. And every once in a while, the Saint Bernard would lift up this little thing's rear end with his nose to see if there was anything underneath.
All right, lived experience with animals aside, none of this really bears on the game itself.
No, we gotta stretch these things out as long as possible. But jumping into our grading rubric then, that I know, Larry, you love our grading rubric.
It's so good.
I know. Number of players. For Ark Nova, the game goes from 1 to 4 players, so it doesn't have a single player mode. Board Game Geek recommends 3 players for a game. I gave this a 2.5 for number of players. It's pretty close to my 2 to 5, but single player is interesting. I kind of feel like maybe 4 players might have been a little much, and that might have been one of the things we ran into, just because of how long turns take. And I know that the break counter had spots set for depending on number of players, but that was about it for determining time limits for differences in number of players. So I did knock it like a half point for that.
Gave it a 3. I thought it paced, I think that's the best case scenario for this type of game with 4 players. I think they did a good job trying to balance it out. I wouldn't want more players. I always give extra points if they have single player modes. For me, this is perfect.
I gave it a 3 for number of players as well, just because I feel like it's at the right amount. I think, and I'll delve into it a little bit more in rate of play, but I think where we really bogged down was the mechanics are a little weird, so it made it seem a lot longer than it should have been with 4 players. So I think once we all kind of doing the 4-player speed went rather quickly, but those first couple of turns were a bit rough.
I gave it a 2 for number of players, mostly just because I saw 1 to 4 as kind of a standard, so to speak. Like, it's what I might expect of other games of its type. I might have given it more had it accommodated even more players than it does, although it is nice that it has the single-player mode.
Yeah, that's where my half point came from on that. For context, our game ended up lasting, 4.5 hours? Maybe
and
more?
That was rushed.
It lasted even longer than that.
I think it did, because we started at 5, and we didn't get out of here until 10,
Did
15.
we start as late as 5?
By the time everything was settled
Yeah.
and set up and all of that,
Including, tutorial stuff, and I think that even includes some of the first turn.
We opened
Right.
the box at 4:30, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
but we also did break for an hour for food.
True.
Yeah.
So I think that 4 to 4.5 is not an unreasonable estimate.
But it was rough.
Perhaps it's time for inclusivity.
Do you want to go first, Stephen?
Sure. My layman's opinion. I give it a 2 for inclusivity. I think that it having multiple different symbols to describe the different in-game effects would be helpful for somebody for whom words was an issue. However, I also think that the sheer number of them was overwhelming when it came to... Well, okay, we can talk about that later when we talk about comprehension. Either way, I thought that it made a good effort to keep things, accessible, but I can't necessarily speak for people with other issues like, say, color blindness. Color was a fairly significant thing throughout the game.
They did keep them relatively different in tone. So I think most people who have color deficiencies would be fine with it. Like the reds and the greens were...
Yeah, they didn't really have them. I noticed that.
Yeah.
Especially because of the fact that, if there was a similar color, the artwork of what it did was entirely different. Like, the conservation cards looked nothing like the animal cards, even though that's orange and green.
Yeah.
Which is something that people with color blindness may struggle with. I ended up giving it a 2 for inclusivity. It's certainly not the most inclusive game I've ever played, but I feel like there was enough thought put into it that they were like, if somebody with a certain disability could be able to pick it up
I mean, I give it a 3. I felt like for what it is, it goes out its way to try to make it a little easier for people to not have to read as much text, to not have to like if you're struggling with one of the cards, they have the symbols next to the text as they give it out, so you can kind of read it almost like shorthand for what a card does. And they had shorthand instructions on the bottom corners too, so you could read through the text, or you could look at the bottom corner of a card and it says 2 lands equals this benefit.
As long as you brought your hieroglyphic reading guide with you.
That is very true.
Yeah.
It took me a little bit of time to get used to how they presented that information without words.
That I definitely took off more for in comprehension, and especially later on in complexity. But for a game that is the scale that it is, I noticed they tried to avoid. They did the primary light colors instead of like red, green, and blue.
Yeah.
They for the pieces. They had ways around having to read all the cards out. For a game that is meant to be rated for ages 14 and up, I feel like they more or less hit that bar considering how much there was of it.
Yeah, I could agree with that. I gave it a 2.
We seem to be very into comprehension, so shall we talk about that?
Yeah.
I gave it a 1.5 for comprehension. This is when, like Steven said, symbols go too far. I love having cheat sheets. I love having symbols on cards to help you remember things. But it gets to a point when you put too many in, and then it starts bogging it down because you're trying to decipher both the words and the pictograms.
Mm-hmm. I gave it a 2 for the same reason. I feel like it should seem straightforward if you play this a few times. But you need to play it a few times, and even then, because Larry, how many times have you played this game?
Just once.
Just once?
Yeah.
Oh, twice.
Well, twice now.
We hit a few things even after your first time playing them that you hadn't run into previously.
Yeah. I mean, rightfully so. The deck is about 5,000 cards big, and the first time I played this, I think we started at about 9:30 at night. So, but we also did manage to wrap it up in about 2.5 hours.
Move.
No, not with the 2 we were playing.
Okay.
We were quick.
Okay, because from my aspect, I'm like, this isn't a game I would do at noon and have food and just hang out all day.
Just you wait for Twilight Imperium. It's gonna happen one day.
No.
It's gonna. I can't have 2 people backing out on me.
I already said I'm not doing that one.
I know you said that.
Steven's all for it.
I have played many games of Twilight Imperium. They were fun. But we're talking about Ark Nova right now.
I like to just threaten Brooke with it every now and then.
If I go back to comprehension, I give it a 2 for comprehension. And I don't know that I'm interpreting it the same way I'm supposed to be interpreting it, because definitely, if we talk about ease of picking it up, it's 1, maybe 1.5. But I bumped it up to 2 because once you start, getting it, it's organized in such a way that things do fit together very nicely. That once you figure out what things start to mean and how they are organized, it flows easily. So it's a very steep hurdle to get over that, but it does move nicely once you do.
Yeah, I gave it a 2 in comprehension for the exact same reason, honestly. The first time I looked at this game, like I said, we read the directions and we put everything back in the box because we were like, oh my god, this is insanely overwhelming. But once you actually start getting the flow of it, it's honestly probably one of the easiest games of this type to play. Everything kind of just makes sense. There's no odd rules, there's no weird things you have to do in between turns. In between turns, it's put everything back on the board, take your money, and move on. That's it. It's very simple for how in-depth it is.
If anybody is so lucky, I hope that you have somebody who's played before the first time you play. That definitely makes it easier.
Oh, yeah.
I will say one of the things that threw me off on this was as you start to get into some of the cards, like at one point I played I had to get an animal for Australia in order to play the koala. So I had drawn the platypus. I played it and there was a thing on it called venom tokens. And I thought, okay, well that makes sense, like you probably have a bunch of venomous stuff in the game. But then Steven played the anaconda, which had constrictor tokens. which are a totally different kind of animal-related token that is specific to probably like 10 cards in this 5,000 card deck. And I started to realize there's probably a bunch of those.
There's only 4.
Okay.
There's Venom, Constriction, Hypnosis, which we've seen as well. That was one Brooke had. And then there was one other one that I can't remember what it is, what it does, or anything, but I know there's a 4th.
Honestly, dealing with it as it came up was probably the right call.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I said we were going to do with them, is that I knew what they did, I had the sheet next to me, and if they come up and they get played, we'll go over what they do. But don't try to remember that beforehand.
Mm-hmm. So, that's probably it for comprehension.
Yeah, as far as getting your hands on this game, it was developed in Germany, but there is a American and English distributor, Capstone Games. So you can get this ordered to probably brick and mortar stores. You can find it online on like Amazon and on their website for Capstone Games, as well as the expansions are all available there too.
Yeah, and you found it in person though, right?
Yeah, as someone who likes to find things in stores, I know I'm old. I like to just hunt things down. I do the same thing with like records or anything. Finding it in store was a bit of a struggle. I ended up having to go to, well, we don't really have local game shops around here anymore. There's one that's in the area, and the other one's another hour away. I ended up going to the one that was an hour away and found their only copy there.
You can have game stores order stuff for you, though, right?
Yeah, just like I can have record stores order me records. I still don't.
Yeah, it's just not as much fun.
Exactly.
Fair.
It's, they have this.
You might as well have it delivered to your house at that point.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I don't like doing that. So, I don't know. It's just more fun the other way. I gave it a 1.5 for availability, though, just because it wasn't really, it was on my radar, but I wasn't looking for it, and I did manage to stumble across it. So, 1.5 points for that. But it wasn't something that, I could go into any friendly local game store and pick up, or go to Target and grab, or something like that.
Yeah, I gave it a 1. Usually how I stack it is like 1 is you can find it online, 2 is you find it at a board game shop, and 3 is finding it at stores like Target.
Yeah.
So unfortunately it'd be a 1 for me, because other than the one time you found it, it's not in our local shop.
Yeah. Well,
a
lot of things aren't.
Yeah, that's fair.
I had given it a 2.
They got plushies.
They have so many plushies at our store. Oh, God.
Yeah, I gave it a 2 as well, mostly for the exact same reasons everybody else talked about. It's just I forgot that 0 was an option when I was weighing the things.
We don't do it
It's like, you can get it if you want it. It's not that hard. It's not out of print.
Yeah, that's what 0 for me for this would have been, out of print and like having to find a used copy, and I don't trust used copies of board games.
Oh, God.
There is one of my favorite games that we'll be playing that I'll probably honestly give a 0 for availability, even though I did also find that at Battlegrounds as well. Because finding that at Battlegrounds was pure luck.
So, Brooke.
Materials. I honestly loved this game's materials. The only thing that I didn't, well, it's not even that I didn't like. It was funny to me that no one else noticed that the small brown thing was a coffee cup. It's supposed to symbolize the coffee break.
Yeah.
But there were wooden pieces involved. The cards were beautiful. The board was set up really well. The quality of the mats were good. I was worried about the mats when I heard it was going to be like a mat in front of you, because if you have drinks or something on the table and it's just normal paper, it wouldn't work. But it was a plasticized. It had a small coating on the outside. So unless something catastrophic happens, a couple drips wouldn't hurt it.
Yeah. Not quite laminated.
I was really happy with it. The box organization wasn't bad either, and I'm usually a stickler on box organization. There was a lot of bags, but
there's enough space.
Yeah, that's the thing. Sometimes they'll give you whereas you have to put it in a specific order. I feel like we could have stacked them up a couple different ways.
Yeah.
So I give it a 3.
It got a 2.5 from me. I mean, just because the sheer amount of cards that there are, I would have loved a card tray. I understand. Not everyone can do that, but the fact that I have to put the deck of cards in 5 different bags, while definitely encouraging shuffling next time I play, a little stack in there would have been nice.
I'd given it a 3 for materials. I thought the images were nice. The little cardboard pop outs for the zoo structures had their own little art on each side that was different. They it was good. I didn't really have any complaints about it. I didn't get to see much of the box organization though, because that was on the other side of the table for me.
There isn't, but there's enough space.
And
Which
there's
is
a cheat
why-
sheet.
Yeah, it's why it loses half a point for me. Is just a little bit of effort would have been awesome, but other than that, I can fit everything in there, and it doesn't look like the top's about to blow off. So
Yeah, I gave it a 3 for materials as well. Again, I wasn't really focused on box organization, although that is definitely a point. The materials were great. The art was great. The quality of the construction was great. I got nothing to say.
You can also get an organizer on Etsy. This is probably the steepest I've seen for organizers.
Yeah.
But you can pick one up for like about $45 to get the whole box organized. Yeah, like that's on the more expensive side for 3D printed. Usually that's the price for like if you get a nice wooden like
Yeah.
laser etched one. But they do have it. And it is very specific to each piece because part of it is like tiling. How would you explain those tiles? Like the shape
zoo
of it?
pieces,
Yeah.
they're hexes built into different patterns.
Yeah, so they have specific slots made for each one.
Ooh,
So it's worth the price because
Yeah.
they can't use those patterns for other things, but it is steep. And it still has the deck split into 5 different little boxes. It doesn't have one big one.
I think talking about the deck might bring us into setup.
Pretty well, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll say breakdown was easy on this.
Hmm.
Well, you didn't have to put the cards in 5 different bags.
This is true. I just had to go pile things for you, but
Yes.
it's easier than setting it up.
Yeah.
I mean, setting it up wasn't that bad, was it?
No, it wasn't. I gave it a 2 on setup. Honestly, with the amount of stuff that there is, setup is actually pretty damn smooth, all things considered. I mean, you shuffle the cards, put them in a stack, give everybody a board, deal out 8 cards to each person, and put your cubes on your mat. That's about it.
And yeah, set up the cards on the main board too. But yeah, I gave it a 2. It's a little in depth considering how big of a scale you're working on, but that's really more the size of the game, I think, than anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. I gave it a 2 because there's a lot of shit to work with. But it's not actually that bad. There aren't complicated arrangements or no arcane things you have to do with the pieces. It just kind of goes onto the board once you get them all out.
No galaxy building.
No galaxy building. Even that isn't that bad, but we're not talking about that right now.
I gave it a 2 as well. I mean, same as everyone else.
Unified opinions on this podcast today.
Yeah, honestly, it's a little. It's a
Give
little
it till the next section, buddy.
Oh, I know. I know.
Actually, I can see from here. I think we're
Yeah,
yeah.
I really liked this game. I'll be honest. Even
Yeah.
it was a little sloggy at parts, but I really enjoyed this.
Speaking of being a little sloggy, rate of play.
Yep.
This one's going to be divisive.
Is it though?
I gave it a 3
Really?
because of the way that I play these types of games. I have my next 6 turns planned out in advance. It comes to me, I'm done before someone's even finished looking at the card from their last turn. It's one of those games that if you know or play these types of games often, you're able to quickly plan out what you want your next move to be. Which is why I think the playtime comparison of almost 5 hours to 2 hours exists, because the group that I played this with previously, we all play like that, where we're just like, alright, I'm doing this, and then I'm doing this, and then I'm doing this. So yeah, it got a 3 for me on rate of play.
Whereas I gave it a 1 for rate of play. A couple of reasons for that. It wasn't just because the game took for fucking ever. The way that the cards ended up falling definitely was a disadvantage. And the fact that that happens is something that could potentially have been addressed in the game's construction. As I was saying to, I think Ian on the ride home, was it, or something like that, if there was a standard set of relatively easy conservations to begin the game, then the problem we ran into, where none of us could meet any of the conservations for turns way into the future, wouldn't have happened. However, I am not like you in terms of how I play.
Yeah.
One of the reasons is because I like to pay attention to what other people do. And with a game like this, if you do that, then you actually have to spend time thinking on your turn, wasting everybody else's time instead of, something else. So there's a certain amount of that you definitely cannot do with this game, but unless you're really on top of it, it's not going to actually... It can bog down easy.
I do want to interject on one of the things that you mentioned with the conservation projects. What I would really like to see, or what I would really like to make a house rule the next time I break this out, don't put out any conservation projects till about maybe the second break and see where people are at. Because there's 8 base ones, and it's one for each continent, so that brings you up to 5. There's one for having all animal types, and then I think there's 2 that are based on like catch and release programs or something like that. So I'd really like to see how the game would flow if you waited until maybe about the second break and then pick from the base 8 on what goes out.
So I was going to get this to 2, but I think I'm going to move my point from the simple and complex up and reduce rate of play on this, because just to go into what it's same score, but to go on what Steven was saying on our talk on the ride home, the big example I can give is what Larry talked about earlier. Your favorite animal for this
Siberian tiger.
And how much did that Siberian tiger cost?
30 coins, 2 predators, and a rock enclosure.
And how long were you holding on to that Siberian tiger for?
Turn 1 till turn end game.
There really should be a symbol on these cards to organize them based on some kind of phase system. I realize it'd be harder to organize the cards because you have to shuffle them in at some point, or when you're distributing cards. But based on the fact that we couldn't really get any of the conservation stuff done, and we got 2/3 of the way into the game before we started seeing cards that apparently we were supposed to get earlier on. Cards that couldn't be used after someone had gotten 25 appeal. If those cards had been out sooner, it might have made the game go a little faster towards the beginning and not kind of lull as much. But now we had cards in our hand that we couldn't play from the start. Like the koala. I thought I had to... you have to have a bunch of alliances before you can play this card out.
To be fair, sorry to interrupt, but we were new to the game. We did not know how to pick our starting hands very well. And I think all of us ended up keeping something that we probably should have discarded early game because it just couldn't be played.
That is somewhat fair, but also I was drawing cards constantly that I just could not play for the longest time. That was something I kept running into even as the game continued to progress, and I was changing hands almost all the time. We were constantly hitting the break because a lot of us just didn't have things we could do.
I was going to say, to raise you on that, the biggest problem I had with getting that goddamn tiger out was the fact that we kept going to break. There were cards that I could have used that were available in the row to play that, but they were always in slot 1 or 2, so I wasn't able to actually get them in time. Anytime I got close to getting one, it would go to break, and then they'd get reshuffled back in, or it was my fault, I should have bought the larger hand size, just so I could keep some of the other cards that I needed. The problem with doing a phase system like that is that there are cards, like the Sloth Bear that I played, and the Panda that I played, both the same tier as the Siberian Tiger, but different requirements, that I got out on like turn 4. So a phase system isn't going to do anything, because if you do a phase system like that, by the time those cards come into play, your zoo's probably already going to be full. So I think a phase system, honestly, would be a terrible solution.
I mean, I'm just talking like even like 3 or 4 breaks in, it switches, or you shuffle the rest in. I feel like even just having a few rounds of cards where people can get something situated to at least get an income in or get something out on the board would have made our playtime not only a lot smoother, but wouldn't be relying on the random chance of 5,000 different cards in the deck in order to hopefully be able to play something.
To pile onto that bandwagon, I started off with 2 things incentivizing me to play small animals. I had a devil of a time getting small animals. I got very close toward the end, but they just kept coming up. I had an animal that I needed an African animal to play and could never find an African animal. And there was a lot of things that I felt I was constantly waiting on not being able to play because I couldn't find the prerequisites.
I think the lesson I've learned from playing this twice is don't hang on to heavy hitters in your hand. There will be a heavy hitter that will show up that you can play. Like, I spent all game sitting on this African elephant the first time I played that I never got out because I just never got the third African animal that I needed to play it because people just kept stealing it. I think with a heavy hitting card like that, if you can't get it out, just get rid of it. Wait for it to pop up again later.
I should say my score was a 1 for rate of play on that.
Mine was also a 1. But other than the things said, I think part of it was just my ADHD. Like, I started taking a supplement that's helped my ADHD a lot, the iron pills.
Yeah.
But that means that I can't sit still for long waiting for turns to come around to me. So, like, I baked 2 batches of cookies. I started doing push-ups at one point. Like, I was all over the place just because I was trying to wait my turn, but I could not be patient because I am personally dealing with something. It had nothing to do with the game. Like, there were parts I did not like that it made it slog, that you guys said, but I think for me it was just how late at night it was and my own brain.
Yeah, I didn't have my willometer this time around, unfortunately, for rate of play.
You had the Brookeometer, which isn't very reliable.
One thing I will say to its benefit, and the reason I almost gave it a 2, and I kind of did give it a 2 initially, was unlike Wingspan, where we were doing our own management system, but it was a lot more passive towards other players. One of the reasons I had docked that some points was because during other people's turns, there really wasn't anything for you to do. At least during this game, you were tracking what other people were doing, if only so that you could tell when the next break was coming, if someone, and your cards could interact with other players too, like the Venom tokens and the Constriction tokens. So there were reasons to pay attention while other people were doing things.
Yeah, and I liked Wingspan better because of that, and I'm not as much a fan of that mechanic in this game.
Fair.
Why? What happened?
I got hit twice.
I
Poison and a Constrict.
I will say, I think if Will were a part of this episode, he probably would have also given a bit of a higher rate of play, just because he plays these kinds of games like I do, where he has his next 5 turns already knowing what he's going to do. Unless somebody screws that up, and then it's all hope is lost, and we sit there for 38 minutes while he deliberates over his hand.
Honestly, how many times was I that guy? Just be like, hey guys, want a break now?
Yeah.
Must have screwed you over a couple of times.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Speaking of break where we got paid, let's talk about the price of this.
So $75 on the Capstone game site. Most other places will have it at the same price. I did see that when I was doing the research on this, it was on sale on Amazon if you want it, but otherwise that's pretty much the set price. $30 for the one expansion that we'll talk about after this, and $11 each for the 2 additional map kits that came that can give you different options for player mats.
I think I was $70 out the door, and I feel like that's fair enough. I gave it a 2.5 just because I'm sick of high-priced games that are this in-depth. Like, it's a little on the pricey side, but I get that's where things are heading with the industry, so I'm happy to pay it. But it is still also very expensive as the one who typically buys most of the games for my playing group.
I gave it a 2. It's a decent price. I'd love it to be lower. I think that with the quality of the items in it, it's not like there were there were some wooden pieces, but they weren't like specifically for this game outside of the the little mug.
Yeah.
So they didn't. It could have been less with the quality of the items that they have in it.
Yeah.
I gave it a 2 as well. I think that given what it was in terms of complexity and the quality of its materials, I think it deserved to be that price. However, it is objectively expensive. Somebody looking for more of a deal is going to go elsewhere.
I gave it a 2.5, like Larry did, for the same reasons. I'm not quite as willing to pay that much money, but I do understand why it is the price that it is. For games of this size and magnitude, $75 is a little high, but not really unreasonably high. I would say like $65 is probably where I would look to spend for something like this. And like I said, it was on sale on Amazon for $53, so it's not like you can't find it for those prices.
Yeah, during that discussion, you did mention all of the extras that could be added to the game. So what do you think about that?
I think whatever maniac sits down and plays this game and says, you know what this game could use? more cards and more tokens and more symbols. You're fucking mad. That said, there's only one of them, and the map packs are pretty cool, so I gave it a 3.
I gave it a 2 just because I'm really interested to see what marine animals would do. But for fuck's sake, man, why do you need more cards?
I gave it a 3 because they have one expansion, which means they know it's a lot.
Brooke,
So
there's
this-
more cards.
I will
There
also
are
say
more
this
cards.
only came out 3 years ago.
I have freakishly large hands, and I cannot hold that deck.
But then you can also have the opportunity to take some cards out that you don't like. Like maybe those stupid poison and constrict. Like,
Although having to go through all 500 cards to find them is a chore in itself.
yeah. I thought that it gave just enough where it's like, yeah, some zoos do have aquariums. That's not that much of a stretch. If they come out with a dragon expansion or something, then I'll have qualms. But like for this, that's fine. And I love the idea of more maps. The maps are fun, a fun mechanic. It's static. You can't really change it. So having other options is great.
Yeah, maps I'm all for, but like, no more cards, please.
I understand like why they put them there. If they start doing like roller coasters and mythical animals, then we can riot.
Yeah, I do kind of want to actually touch on that really quick. I do appreciate how grounded the idea of the game is. It's not, some fantasy game or anything like that. It's you are trying to build a functioning zoo that people will appreciate. And I kind of like the message of that, where you need to balance being entertaining, but also not being a complete waste of society and having a zoo where you abuse your animals.
If you were a zoo tycoon kid, you would like this.
Yes.
To
No, you wouldn't actually,
No?
because Zoo Tycoon is all about punishing those animals as much as you can in the name of profit.
Okay, I'm one of those weird people that played it the right way, where I was trying to make a functioning zoo.
See, during the intro, I was gonna say, if you like Zoo Tycoon, you'll really like this game. And then I was like, Brendan that passed Larry, and he's like, it's nothing like Zoo Tycoon.
Yeah.
Zoo Tycoon, you're worried about attendance. But I'm like, it's just appeal points.
Yeah.
But apparently, I'm not the only one.
No, I cannot. There's many people that, much like The Sims, would use it to just torture people and let the lions out. But like, there are some of us who just played the game to play the game as the sim was intended.
Why don't you just go buy a zoo then?
Because I was 7.
If Matt Damon can do it, you can too.
I was 7.
I
He
think
got it for like $5.
Nick Cage has a bunch of exotic animals. He can open a zoo.
Oh god.
I wanted Cage to just open his house. That's it. I just want to walk around in there.
What were we talking about again?
Arc Nova, I think.
Okay.
Nick Cage's house.
So, yeah, I gave it a 2 just because it seems like it has extras.
It has enough
Yeah,
extras,
cool.
in my opinion.
Yeah, it has stuff.
Don't need them.
But please don't do any more. Except maybe maps. That's it.
Yeah,
No
keep
more.
the maps up. Also, make your coffee cup look like a coffee cup.
You just need an extra hole. Just one drill.
Yeah.
Or maybe a different color.
Well,
I mean,
because coffee's brown.
but having the
But
cup the
cups
color
are
of
white.
the coffee.
Okay, cups are white. Or, yeah, there's a lot of different things
Yep.
they could do to make that better. But
What if they had only painted the top of it brown?
oh, there we go. That
Make
actually
the
would have helped.
bottom of it a little more fat and cup-like.
Yeah, it doesn't
They
like
didn't want it to
standing up
tip
very
over.
much. I mean, it stood up nicely enough. But
Yeah. But
either
it
way,
never stood up on, like, cup side. It was always, like, on its side or upside down.
I think that's more of an us problem than the
Yeah.
cups problem.
I played this twice, and that took me the second time to even realize it's a coffee cup. It's not a me problem.
yeah, when the symbol for break was the coffee cup on the cards, obviously.
The symbol on the card doesn't look like the piece. The symbol on the
way.
card looks like a cup of coffee.
Either way,
The
we
piece looks like a molehill with a tumor.
clearly enjoy tormenting each other about this, but how much did we enjoy the game?
Well, you
Fuck
brought it up.
you, Larry. I wish it was Will in this seat and not me. I gave it a 1, and that's only because I like playing games with you guys. I was miserable throughout this, and partially because I kept drawing stuff that I just couldn't use, and it was incredibly frustrating.
Yeah.
Partly because, and the reason I gave it a 1 too is because I also recognize that I didn't know what I was doing throughout this. So, for one example, there's a piece called the petting zoo where you can put in various animals. And I had a rabbit in my hand from the very beginning, but I thought I couldn't play it yet because all the petting zoo animals, or most of them, give 0 appeal, and the card text says gain 3 appeal for each animal in the enclosure. I didn't realize that included the card that you played itself, because it didn't actually say that on it. So I was holding on to this thing for the longest time, not realizing I could have just played it and filled my petting zoo completely, and I never got to then after that.
Yeah, I blame that on comprehension, not necessarily enjoyment.
I blame that on you.
We did start this game.
It impacted it.
Yeah, so I don't want to give it a 0, because obviously some of it was just my misunderstanding of the game. But, God, was this boring.
Glad we found your Firetower.
Yeah. Yeah.
I give it a 3, actually. I didn't start there necessarily, but as the game progressed and I felt like I was understanding how it worked, I had a desire to play. And I was a little bit sad when the game ended, although, no, looking at the time, I was not sad that we were leaving.
Brooke would have kicked us out.
I was actively
Yeah.
kicking you out.
Yeah.
I had work the next day.
Yeah,
We said we were done, and Steven kept talking and playing his card.
I wanted to make my zoo. My zoo wasn't done yet. So either way, I had a good time, and I don't think that was just because I ended up winning via whatever nonsense we did at the end.
We just rushed some qualifications is all.
Just a little bit.
I gave it a 3. I had a lot of fun, and I baked 2 batches of cookies. So, it's a good time.
As we all know, I hate these types of games. These are not the types of games I play at all, ever. That's complete sarcasm. I love the hell out of this. This got 3 across the board for me in terms of enjoyment. It's in depth. It's different. It adds new spins to the genre. I like the message it's trying to send. I absolutely love this game. So
I get it. I know I'm the odd man out. I'll die on this hill though.
I mean, I have no desire to attack you on this hill. You go just stand there. It's fine.
yeah.
This is why I gave it a 1.5 on recommendation. Just because it's going to be very divided on who can play these types of games and who can't. If you like these games, of course it's going to be a winner. But I thought you would have liked this game, to be honest, Ian. Because it's got animals, and it's very much set in realism. And
I think between the random generation for what you draw and how much the start, I think, is really what did it for me.
okay.
Because starting out with cards that I just couldn't use or didn't know how to use, the complexity really bogged it down for me as far as getting it in the beginning. And I'm not really big on management games. I never played The Sims. I never played Zoo Tycoon. I never played any of those. I never had any interest in learning how to run a business.
Fair.
But that said, I gave it a 2 for recommendation because I do realize I'm the odd man out. And while everyone at this table has different experiences with board games, I could recognize that there were 3s across the board for everyone else but me.
Well, I gave it a 2 as well, actually. I recognize that this is not a game for everybody. This is very complicated, and somebody who's looking for something, well, not this, is not going to like it. However, if you can get over that hurdle, if you can put in the time and effort to learn the game and get to the point where you can play it easily, then it's great.
Yeah, I gave it a 2 as well. This isn't something that I would drag everybody into and be like, you have to try this. But it is something that I would suggest to most people as a entry point to these types of games. Because as complex and as in-depth as it may have seemed, there are way worse options. There are games that Ian probably would have just walked out of.
Well,
Are these games worth playing?
The fast food management game is
Food
one.
Chain Magnet.
Food Chain Magnet.
That is one of those games that I'm just going to talk about real quick because we are going to be doing it at one point. It is a game that you can absolutely cripple yourself and never be able to recover by turn 2. If you don't know what you're doing. Which is why I said we need to play it twice when we do it. Because the first time that we played with 5 people, and 2 people ended up just quitting. Because they were like, there's no way I can ever recover from this. So, yeah, there are definitely worse options. As far as replay value, though, I gave this a 3. There's so much variation considering I've played this twice, and I still haven't even seen the 4th type of animal, I guess, attack is what you want to call it.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, certain animals that when you play them have detrimental effects to other players, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like the poison, like the constrict.
Yeah, the fact that there's 10 maps straight out of the box, the deck I haven't even seen a quarter of yet.
Yeah, I would give this a 3 as well. Different mats to play on. The fact that the deck is so large, you will almost never see the same cards multiple times in a row. Yeah, I give this a 3.
Yeah.
That there are multiple ways that you could choose differently and have a very different experience, but still have fun.
I gave it a 3. This is when a bigger deck is better.
Yeah. Though, maybe too big.
No such thing.
I gave it a 1 for replay value. If I spent $75, 80 with tax on a game like this, the question is on our sheet, because I do recognize, by the way, that it has a high level of randomization, so that you could, in theory, have many different games of this and never run into the same problems twice or the same things twice, which is why it has a 1 and not a 0. But I would regret my purchase from the moment I played it the first time if I were to buy this game.
Yeah, what Ian is actually saying is that he doesn't want to play it again.
Well, it doesn't have value to him. So replay
Sure.
value, it's personal. That's why it's under the personal section.
Can we
And
name
he
this
would not
episode Ian's Firetower?
Honestly, that's pretty good.
Ian's
Yeah.
Lament. I could never see myself playing this again.
That's fair.
If it were if I did play it again, I'd probably have a little more fun with it because I don't have to learn as I'm going, but I would never.
Well, by the time we convince you to play it again, it's gonna be 7 years from now, and you're gonna forget the rules anyway.
Five hours of hell were enough to turn me away from this forever.
I still argue that this could be a fun time if you made a day of it and you had snacks and you had like a set, like pizza coming or something, or it was just a day with your friends, but you needed something to do so you didn't like have to figure out what you were doing in the moment.
It's a shame we don't do that more often, but life.
Yeah, life is hard.
Saturday nights.
Yeah,
Busy.
Yeah, I'm not the.
I have
No,
a standing
yeah.
engagement on Saturday
It's
nights.
when I go hang out with Possum.
Classic versus innovative. Our sliding scales, Larry's favorite. I give this a 2 for innovative. I say innovative in that the theme is good, all the various symbols, and the fact that it's not directly competitive, but it still has a lot of player interaction. I thought was good, but it's nothing I would write home about. I feel like I've seen there are plenty of different management games, so it's not like it's redefining a genre or anything.
I gave it a 3 for innovative solely because of the breakdown at the end. Like when you figured out who won, I think that was very cool how it was like a subtraction process and you weren't sitting there counting up points, because a lot of the strategies that their management that we've done, it's like you almost have to do a whole extra round's length of time going over each step of what points you get. Where this was just like, oh, here's 1 number, here's 2 number, subtract them. Who's closest? Like that made the end so much nicer for me.
Yeah.
I give it a 3 for innovative as well. Now, granted, we don't have to talk about the scale and the difficult ways in which we could read it, but basically I said this is innovative in a good way.
Yep.
This is not like other games that I've played. It's very different than other games that I've played, and I think that it pulled it off very well.
I gave it a 2 for innovative because, I see parts of other games in there, but definitely the end game scoring mechanics is one of the most interesting ways I've seen to do things. Where it's just, okay, did people really like going to your zoo? Yes. How much of a scumbag were you, though? And that's kind of how the point system works.
I do like the fact that we were way on the people like our zoos track and very not far on the we're good for animals track.
I mean,
That's
you were.
so realistic, though.
Yeah.
Like, for a zoo that is so realistic for people to want to go there anyway. I mean, if you go to Cherokee, I think it's South Carolina, they have legitimate concrete zoos where you can go see bears and throw lettuce at them to eat. Like, that's a modern thing you can do, and it's always swamped.
Yeah.
Like, just because people want to go do something does not mean it's good for the animals.
The
I've been to
Brookfield
the
Zoo.
Beardsley Zoo.
Beardsley's pretty good, actually. They have a lot of outreach
I
programs.
still remember that tiny tiger.
It's-
The tiger dog chasing before.
Yeah.
They'd be kind of
They've changed that a bit.
okay.
Yeah.
Good. Because
To be-
that was not good.
No.
To be fair, I haven't been to the Beardsley Zoo in about 4 or 5 years, but the last time I was there, it was just the most depressing
Bards trip?
shithole.
Bard's trip?
I mean, we
I will go to the zoo
can.
for anything.
So, my favorite zoo in terms of animal abuse was the Brookfield Zoo in Chicago. Everything there, honestly, very well put together, very, like, for the animals, except for the prairie dog area. Because they have this huge open field for all of the prairie dogs, which is great. They need a lot of space. You know what they don't like? People's heads popping out of the fucking ground 2 feet away from them.
That's very common.
You
Isn't it?
can
It is.
you can crawl through the tunnel and just scare the hell out of these poor things. And it's terrible. Because anytime anyone would, they would just run in the opposite direction. Nobody benefits from this.
I don't know. The little children don't realize how bad it is.
No.
Well, when it's so a lot of zoos that I've seen do this are they're going to be like a small area that you can do it in. No, this was the whole field. There was no safe
space.
Yeah, there was
Okay.
no safe place for them.
Huh.
You could haunt them for the entire day.
So simple, complex.
Simple and complex. I gave it a 2 on the complex scale. It's got a little bit of a rough start, but it's not anything crazy. It's pretty run of the mill once you actually know what you're doing, and it goes very smooth for a game this style.
The switch around I did was I brought my complex up to 2 when I took from rate of play, because those two are very connected for me as to why they score as they do. But I feel like it's not complex necessarily in a bad way. The way the mechanics work overall tend to mesh together pretty well, and they do have some good ideas like on scoring. And that said, the amount of symbols are just overwhelming, and going through this, I feel like for the first time, really highlights some of the weaknesses and the ability to comprehend this.
So I gave it a 3 for complex, specifically because it is very complex, but it fits together well once you get going. Once you know what's going on, once you're comfortable with the rules, it flows very well, and it doesn't seem nearly as complex as I think it is. But still, yeah, I think that the comprehension, that initial hurdle, is its biggest downfall.
I gave it a 2 for complex for similar reasons, where it starts to bog towards the complex in a bad way. It didn't get all the way there, but like it definitely. I saw Ian struggle as it was going on, and so I was like, "There's no way I can give it a 3, knowing that." As much fun as I had with it, that was not a thing.
Yeah, I will also say like that's kind of my own handicap is like with ADHD, it can be very hard to organize, and that's been my struggle. Has always been keeping things nice and clean and organized. Positioning the pieces around the zoo. I don't know if you noticed, but mine was a mess.
Yeah, I would honestly weird thing. I would suggest. Did you ever play Magic the Gathering?
I did.
Okay, I would pick it up again for a little bit, just because that helps me with my like organization on a field for any game. Is that I look back at Magic the Gathering and try and sort it out that way.
I hear you, and I appreciate the advice. I do also kind of hear it in the terms of, I hear you're having trouble focusing. Have you tried cardboard crack?
As one ADHD to the other, it's more like, I hear you're having troubles. This is what helped me, because you saw me. I was running around in circles the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, if I didn't have my cards set up like Magic the Gathering, I would also be completely lost the entire time. And Uno organization helps too.
Yeah. I miss Uno. I need to go back to playing Uno.
We can do
that would actually be a fun party game night.
We could do. I mean, there's also new expansions of Uno, or new types of.
Oh,
Uno.
there are so
There's
many.
so many.
There are
I
so
mean,
many.
So
it's
I mean,
not
we
like
could
they
always,
can make all the money just publishing Ono over and over again.
Yeah, we could always just grab a couple and then use that as like a thing.
Would you consider Uno kind of gambling-esque?
I think it could be. I think it's a gateway.
So, because I'd like to do like a fun like party game gambling adjacent, because I also have Machikoro 2, which is just gambling for kids.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
we can talk off because that's.
Yeah, we'll leave it at gambling for kids and move on.
Yeah. We did Machi
So-
Goro itself. We haven't
Okay.
done Machi Goro 2 yet.
Yeah, that's true.
We could do that too.
Yeah.
You can do that and Uno at the same. Well, not the same time.
Christmas
Same
episode.
Oh,
Honestly?
yeah, we're doing that again this year.
Every year. Once a year.
Love Christmas.
I feel like Max is gonna be like, oh, we're just doing Uno this time, thank God.
Maybe that's what I'll save a food chain magnet for.
Oh,
It's
no.
5.
So final scores. I gave this a 32 out of 42.
Higher than I expected. from
Yeah,
you.
I mean, I don't enjoy it, but I won't pretend that it's not a fairly well-made game.
Yeah, you give it a lot of system points.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's why we kind of have it set up like that. So it's not just your opinion. It's
Mhm.
got some things that are grounded in.
To be fair, Firetower still scored like a 19.
Well, that's
from me.
because it was objectively bad.
Yes.
Well, I also gave it a 32. I just think that's interesting that we came to the same overall conclusion despite the vast differences in our personal enjoyment.
You were a little more critical on gameplay than I was.
It takes a lot for me to give 3s. Honestly, 2's kind of my default, so it might just be me.
I gave it a 31.
34 and a half.
Brings us to a
32.
32.3.
Point
We were racing on that
Yeah.
one to see who could get it first.
So, it's one of the few times that I think overall our opinions are pretty much, we're pretty much in agreement for the most part. Other than like,
I was going to say, we sure are.
We didn't have similar experiences. We did agree on the game itself, points wise.
Yes.
the quality of the game speaks for itself. Even if
Yeah.
you don't enjoy the game, you can appreciate the time and effort that went into it. I feel like overall it's a good game, and if you enjoy management games and you don't mind dropping $75 on one, it's worth picking up.
And if you're like me, where you're just like, I don't care if I win or lose, I just want to play this monkey,
Yeah.
then
Shout out to Siberian Tigers anywhere.
All right, so anyone else have anything else they want to say before we
No.
wrap up?
no, just that I want to play the game again now that I know what to do.
Well, like he said, there are always Saturday nights, but you have to ditch your current commitments for that.
Yeah,
Womp
Brooke,
womp.
We'll get you one of the times.
probably. Every so often, I'm just like doing something else.
All right, thank you everyone for joining us for another episode of Dancing with the Bards. And if you want to reach out to us, you can get in touch at dancingwiththebards@gmail.com. We are also on Mastodon. We are on Facebook. We are on Blue Sky is the big one that I check regularly. And I think that's it now. We're not on
Yeah,
X
no.
anymore.
We are on X. We're not on TikTok anymore.
Nope.
I don't think you guys even realized we were on TikTok, to be honest.
I didn't know. I never used the app.
Okay.
Not really, because I was like, oh, China's going to steal my information. It just never really appealed to me.
Yeah, I was on it a lot. I kind of miss it, but it's what it is.
And we are technically on Instagram, but I don't really check that either.
Yeah,
So.
me neither. I'll
That's where you can send the feed pics.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us, and we will see you next month. Goodbye.
Bye.
Ta-ta.